Started. So welcome to Noon Hour Slides from the Moose Jaw Museum and Art Gallery. And we're located on Treaty 4 territory, the traditional lands of the Blackfoot, Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We pay our respects to First Nations and Métis ancestors and reaffirm our relationship with one another. We gratefully acknowledge funding from the City of Moose Jaw, Sask Arts, Sask Culture, Saskatchewan Lotteries, Canada Council for the Arts, Canadian Heritage, and the Government of Canada. I'm Vincent Hotelling, the Administrative Assistant here, and I'm here to welcome you to today's presentation. Stuart Anderson is here today to talk about his trip to Haida Gwaii.
Okay. Haida Gwaii is also known as the Queen Charlotte Islands, and it was switched over to being called Haida Gwaii in 2010. And it's actually an archipelago off of the British Columbia's west coast, and it's very wildlife rich. And the Gwaii-Hannes National Park Reserve and the Haida Heritage Site includes remote islands and temperate rainforests. Centuries-old totem poles, which I have a few photos of them, stand in the remains of the Haida National Village, known as Sigang Gwang Langaway. The Naikun Provincial Park on Graham Island has trails and beaches. And this is quite a ways off of the mainland, and the ferry from Prince Rupert takes anywhere from 7 to 8 hours, depending on the tide and the wind conditions. And this is quite an old establishment, and back then in the 1800s and the early 1900s, racism was very rampant, and it was kind of socially accepted back in there. So some of these items might be a little bit touchy, but that's it's a validated source. Anyway, this is a copy of the island. The red thing is highway number 16. There's not very many roads on the island, but we took a tour from West Tours, and it was a bus trip. Very long days on the bus trip. But anyway, we'll get started here, and I'll just go kind of from day one to where we ended up. Well, all right. This is in Vegreville on the way to Haida Gwaii. And of course, that's the big Easter egg there. And this is a shot of the same area in Vegreville. And this was a totem pole that's kind of indicative of the Haida Gwaii Islands. I think this was in Terrace, if I'm not mistaken, or just in that area. And that's one of the hotels we stayed at on this bus trip, which is a very, very exciting and invigorating trip. This is one of the art supply places, convenience store, tourist destination thing. I guess you can buy all sorts of Haida Gwaii memorabilia. It's a very interesting culture. And this was taken in Jasper, and one of the stores, and they sold all sorts of goodies. And this is another totem section of a totem pole. These things are 30 to 60 feet in height, and they're very, very intricate. It took many man hours to produce some of these things. And there's another bit of a tourist destination slash store for getting your authentic Haida Gwaii materials. And the shot of the Whistler Inn in Jasper. It really wasn't very crowded that way. It was very, very smoky. You can see smoke way in the background there on the mountains. And this was a fish ladder on one of the rivers going up there. Salmon and trout would use this ladder. And here's one of the entrance to the Haida Gwaii nation village, Kazan village. That's one of the old totem poles. Is probably 100 or so odd years old, and still in very good shape yet. And there's another sculpture. I don't know whether it's a pig or bear. Almost looks like a bear. It's just sitting there on a bench all by itself. And this was our mascot on the trip as a moose. There's some of the cloud smoke that was in the air. It got quite dense, and we jokingly we put on masks one brief moment. And there's one of the totem poles that was hand carved hundreds of years ago at the Kazan village. And that's how you spell the Kazan village, Kazan. And there's the pictures of the old buildings and some of the totem poles here. There's the entrance to the village, and a little sign there says "Beware of bears." We didn't see any, thankfully. We were kind of leery about walking in there, but everybody else was going, so we just had to run faster than them, I guess. And here was a sign on the highway at dense smoke, limited visibility, and it did get pretty dense later on, but it was nothing that really hurt your eyes or your throat or anything like that. And this is a memorial to a young person who lost his life in a seafaring accident. It was an anchor from one of the old, from the ship that he passed away on. I have a closer up photo of it, and just on not the next one, but the one after the next one. And here's the picture of this bear again, just sitting there on taking up the whole log. And there's this memorial to Cliff Acker from 1942 to 1999. He lost his life in a seafaring accident. And I don't know whether the ship was swamped or he fell overboard or just what the deal was, but it's quite a memorial for him. And historic Cow Bay, the area is right away known originally as Cameron Cove, and in 1908 was renamed when a Swiss man unloaded a herd of cows for his dairy from a barge. And on the waterfront, the first hospital was built by railway contractors. And in 1912, the yacht club acquired the old steam wheeler and moored it in Cow Bay for use as its clubhouse by the established floats. This going back a long ways. And here's the one of the restaurants on Cow Bay. It's very good food. It's primarily seafood. They do serve other stuff. And I couldn't resist this photo. This was just in through a window of a clothing store or bedding store. A nice picture of a nice pooch. And this is a picture of the West Canadian cannery, which was quite prominent in the early 1900s, late 1800s. And I'll tell you more about as we go along. I have some different photos to show you of this. And this was one of the railways just outside of this canning factory. And it was very dangerous, and you never really knew when a train was coming by because it didn't really make any toots or anything like that. And there is a sign that says, you proceed at your own risk, and you had to cross this thing to get into the cannery. And there's another picture of the cannery. It's quite large. All the buildings are maintained pretty well the way they were left in the early 1900s. And there's one of the islands just off the coast. there's just oodles of little bitty islands around there. And the structure that was been carved out of a log depicting, I think this is supposed to depict a Chinese coolie, just by the shape of the hat. And there's another anchor that was used. It WW2nd Liberty Ship anchor Kelly Logging used this anchor to contain logs at Mather Creek, Haida Gwaii. It was recovered from Lewis Island by Gary Lindy in the late 1970s. It found a home in Spirit Square, and it was donated by Brian Eccles. This would have had to been placed on a boat and brought back from the island to the shore, and it was big. It's I don't know how many tons it weighed, but it'd be several, just to anchor these great big ships in there. And this is a photo of one of the shipping ports. It was just plastered with sailboats and motorboats and sailboat homes. It's a very interesting place. The only way to get around there is if you have a car. There are some taxis, but if you don't have a car, bring a car with you. You have to walk or take a taxi or have a bike or something like that. And there's another shot of the little marina. And this is a signpost, just kind of homemade thingy with directing where everyone is. And that item in the background there is emblem of a whale, big bluefin whale. It's surfing or whatever they do. It was Kennel Sound, Sandspik, Fort Clements, Masat is the end of the start of Highway number 16. And there's just a shot of a boat that was in there. It's kind of high and dry. I guess it lived its life. And here was the Mile Zero dining room on the Masat. It's the end of the beginning of the Highway number 16 in BC, which goes across Canada. And there's a picture of a great big cedar log that was just on a tree or hung on a wall, cut off and shaped into this. I thought it was quite interesting, the designs in this wood. This thing is quite a few hundred years old, counting all the rings. And steelhead trout, they don't like you to catch too many of them. They want you to put them back as the trout got overfished, and they're in quite a desperate situation for them. And this was just a device in one of the hotels. I thought it looked quite neat. It was just very simple, but it's got quite a bit of artistic content. And this was on the ferry. And like I said, it takes anywhere from 7 to 8 hours to go on this ferry. And we were on a bus, and there was, I don't know, 50 or so, 60 of us on the bus. There's looking at the stern of the ferry, and it's just gumbooting along. You can't see anything in the skyline, and it really churned up quite a bunch of water. There's a shot of the deck, of the rear of the deck of the ferry. It was quite a huge boat. And there's a better shot of the Canada flag and the surf that's waking up there. There's another shot of the ship from the main deck. And thankfully, they've had lifeboats, quite a few of them actually, even instructions on how to get into them or get out of them. There's another picture of another ferry. They were going pretty hot and bothered when we were there. Of course, now with this COVID thingy, it's all visitations to the island have stopped. It's just necessary, like foods and stuff that would make it there. And this is a picture of a hotel that we stayed at, the Sea Raven Motel. It's not a 5-star hotel, but they couldn't leave you for wanting much of anything. It was roomy and nice and clean. And just a photo from the top, or from the deck of the Sea Raven Motel up to the countryside. And another shot of the wharf of the marina. And these ladders here, or ramps, will rise and lower with the water level. So it gets quite high. And this, I believe, is a portion of a whalebone. I don't really know what portion of it is. If anybody wants to comment on what portion it is, I forgot to get a photo of the description of it. And there's just a shot of the shoreline from our hotel. And there's a shot the other direction. There was quite a bit of traffic there. I'm quite surprised. Again, all these vehicles have to come over in a ferry. There's only 2 ways on or off, and that's by boat or by water. And this one, there's a lot of seafood here, and the prawn and scallop restaurant. I don't believe we stopped in there. We just happened to be walking by and took a photo of it. And this was a environmentally friendly place, Green Coast, because the name goes with the preferred environment. And another shot of a couple of islands. The tide is very, very low there. Usually at a higher tide, the only thing you can see are the trees on that other island, and this one island in the foreground is completely submerged. And someone built a little inukshuk out there on the flats at low tide. And there's another shot of that derelict old boat in there, and somebody attached a nice piece of old log to the wall and made a bit of a sculpture out of it. This was an old fire stove, wood burning stove. I thought it was quite neat. It sat outside there for a long time, but the looks of it, it's quite rusted up. And here's one of the newer totem poles at the Haida Gwaii Education Center. It's again, they're 30 to 60 feet high, and it takes lots of work and patience and lots of skill too to craft these things. And there is the Haida Gwaii National Hospital. That's the name, the Haida Gwaii language underneath there. It's very, very intricate language. I don't know if I could ever speak it or not. And there's just another photo of the shoreline and another island across there, little one in the foreground. And again, that little one would be totally submerged at higher tide. And someone lost a buoy off of I don't know, off a net or a log boom or something like that, and it was laying there. I could see it about, I don't know, 3 or 4 blocks away along the shoreline. I couldn't figure out what the heck it was. I thought it might be a person or something, but I walked over and no, it was a buoy. But anyway, it left it there. I couldn't get it in my suitcase. And there's another shot of an island that'll be completely submerged once the water level got up a little bit. And there's another replica of a bluefin whale. It's I don't know what's called them, or breaching out of their, when they do that out of the water. We didn't see any whales when we were on there, not even on the ferry. And some local wildlife that was living on the beach. Of course, this guy is pretty defunct now. And there was a lone eagle flying over there. I didn't see much for it to eat on, so it must have been looking over its menu, going to a different restaurant or something like that. And part of a crab. I'm not too sure what kind of it is, but I think it's this kind of a crab here, hermit crab. It could be. There's quite a few of that laying on the shoreline. They get bashed in with the waves and lose their lives. And this is a kind of a sewage disposal refurbish place. They treat the sewage and release it back into the ocean. I guess there's no other way to deal with the sewage. And it says house will travel, and concrete wasn't easy to come by in the early days of settlement, and many islands built their houses and business on cedar poles. This meant more work to replace them every few years, but it also meant most buildings could be lifted and skidded from one spot to another. Not only were buildings barged from places like Jedway and Alford tours, structures also took on new roles within each shift in location. The little shack used as a jail in the early days became a chicken coop and is now immortalized as part of the islander's unique home. This is a classic form of island construction. Many have started with a core, often a shack or a trailer, and added onto it and over on the original site. And there's another neat little island I thought was kind of cool, sitting out there. Again, at higher tide, the only thing visible would be the trees. And this is one of the restaurants that we stayed at. We ate a few meals here. It was kind of connected to the motel we were at. There's another photo of it there. Just a basic food, but it was pretty darn good and very reasonable price. Here we are at the Haida Gwaii Education Center. And here's the tour date you can go into. We had a bit of a nosh at the Cafe Bistro. I just forget what the heck it was, but it's pretty darn tasty. It was the tours were quite inclusive. They were very good. Weaving and pool tour, more pool tours, and where land and sea meet. They try to get the younger people involved in kind of this, so they can get back to their roots kind of thing. And here's some of the Haida Gwaii art. This really turns my crank. I really enjoy this type of art. There's another shot of one there. And this is 3 languages: Canadian on the left, or English on the left, and Haida Gwaii in the center, and or other official language, French, on the right side. It's all done by volunteers, of course. And there's another one. This is a picture of or depiction of a canoe, one of their freighter canoes that they use. I have some photos of those too. And again, the National Park Reserve in the 3 languages. And this is inside of the Education Center. It was, the top of it is, I believe it is supposed to be a canoe on its side. And then there's a frog on the bottom, and supposed to be an eagle in the center, and a man on top of it. And I couldn't really find out what the heck this was. It was a brass plate was very, very heavy. And this is one of the totems inside there. I think this was in 3 sections and just put on top of one another. It's quite a unique, and it looks very, very old too. And there's a close-up photo of it. You can just see the splits in the 3 sections there. And this is the Haida Gwaii phrase of the week totem pole. Southern gang gang and northern is going gang. Boy, that's a very difficult language to learn. It'd be different. It's interesting to note that the two areas of the island have different pronunciations of the same thing. And there's another photo of the thing, and that's the tour guide of this center we were at. There's a bit of a close-up of the same thing. The 3 sections of it. And this is just a bit of a explore Haida Gwaii, and on across the top it says explore Haida Gwaii in the language, and it was made by a school shop in 2016. It was very well crafted. And there's one of the totem poles outside in the outside of the education center. Another photo of it from a bit of a different angle. And again, they're 30 to 60 feet in height. Oops. This was another totem, not the same one. It was on closer to the shore or closer to the water. And this is just, I thought this was just a kind of a neat piece of structure to take a photo of the island in the back and a bit of a washed up old tree stump on the shoreline. And there's another photo. We're getting into the older part of the settlement, or the education center, I should say. Of course, you got a totem pole in the middle of it, and then on the roof you've got the solar panels for electricity. And this is just a park bench, a table sitting out there. The structures are made of cement, and the wood, the seats in the top, of course, are wood. And there's another close-up of this other totem pole. Again, all these items have significant meaning. Most prominent one is the eagle there. There's an entirely different one there with 3 faces on the bottom. This one is quite old too. Anybody know this guy? And that's from the bottom looking way up. And another little island there. Been around for a long time. Even got a little bit of a bushy tree thing growing on the top of it. It's a different totem pole. And these are the canoes that they make there. they're quite a large piece of machinery. This area was, they were building these things. These are fairly recent additions. And this is the building that they were housed in, where they were doing the work. There's another one there. You can see a bit of sawdust on the floor just to the left of this canoe. And this part at the back is where one of the workers would have a tiller kind of thing to steer this around as the other guys were rowing. There's the inside of it with some seating. I really like the designs on the sculptures. And this is a picture of the forest, just off to the left of the center, and it's very, very, very desolate. It's, well, centuries old. You walk on this stuff, and it's very, very spongy from the hundreds of years of moss. And again, this little signpost. Now we're getting into this cannery company. This hasn't been used for a long, long time, but the majority of it is still intact. The fishing ships would come in, unload their cargoes, and the workers would just get too busy and cleaning. Here we're stopped at a bit of a restaurant, and they were inducing us into the Haida language and all this other kind of stuff. And the ladies were asked to get up and do a bit of a dance, a Haida dance, and they were just having a real blast with this thing. And there's another part of the fishery building. It was quite a big operation. It employed thousands of people. North Pacific Cannery, that was it. I had the Pacific facing. And this was another mask inside one of the tourist booths. And here we are at the village. Kind of bear with me. I'm kind of jumping around here. This is at the Kazan village, Heritage Village. We're getting some real old structures here. And this is Irene Klar, is a famous artist, makes these Haida patterns. And this is called Ballant Rock. It's a religious place for the Haida, and they have great theories on their religion and their heritage, and this is a very, very religious, emotional spot. And this is the entrance to one of the buildings, and this is you go through a great big totem pole to get into the building. And there's a old derelict old canoe that was out on the edge of this village. Here's the historical village Cassana Museum. Again, it was very, very interesting. There's a lot of stuff to look at in there. And then we stopped on an old antique store. There were quite a few of them on there, and some of these things are, well, hundreds of years old, and they had to be brought over on ships. It's cream separator and an old wagon and a BA sign. A plow for the fields. And this great big old honking wheel came off of a tractor, one of the old tractors in the early 1900s. And they wanted $350 for it. And here's another wheel that more modern version. And this is the $9,000 for a 1876 hearse. And there's the hearse. Pretty swanky. And this is a political promise machine. There were two of them right there. By that I mean manure spreaders. And everybody needs a solid brass spittoon, $43 for this one. They had several of them in there. And here's an old 1952 Wurlitzer record player. And they know what that thing is worth. $5,200. I don't know whether it worked or not. And some more of the stuff you can buy for mementos. And here's the interior of the fish cannery. Very, very old machines. Well, turn of the 1900s machines. There was a old canning machine. And here's a pressure pot, pressure boiler. They had the cans filled with the salmon and sealed and put in here to boil and then shipped to all over the world, really. And this is for cutting up the salmon. They would lay the salmon on this pallet, and these wheels would turn around and cut the salmon into can-sized pieces. And there's one of the canning machines, butchering machine. Someone invented this thing in 1905. They invented this thing, and it's very racist. And it was called the Iron Chink. It took place at 30 manpower to organize them, and that's the machine right there. It was very, very racist times back then. And here's a photo of the people, of the workers canning the fish. Another great big filling and packing machine. Back in the days, this place would have been just milling with workers. And here is a payroll for the month of May 1924. The wages, white wages, were $1,400 for the month, and the Chinese labor was $20. And there probably had to be several hundred Chinese laborers in there, and very, very, very prejudicial. And this is a store, interior of a store shot through a window. This is where the people that worked there had to shop, because there was no 7-Elevens or superstores within vicinity. You know, they were pretty well stuck there, had to buy whatever was there. And there was some of the salmon that was packed for different organizations, same fish, but different organizations. Now there's a real deal for you. 8 bars for 38 cents. Nielsen's assorted chocolate bars. And there was a butcher's block and a butcher's cutting machine over there. And the North Pacific Canning, as anybody wants to read there, salmon canning stimulated economic development on the coast. The main cannery structure, completed in 1895, remains essentially unaltered. Main ethnic segregation were Chinese, Indian, and Japanese, and white labor. North Pacific Cannery entrance site. Oh, and this is going back to the ferry. This was the control panel from the ferry. And there's another photo of a fairly recent canoe on the shoreline. And here's some of these century-old totem poles, several hundred years old. And there's another photo of a canoe just up on the shore. I didn't see anybody around to use it, and it was too heavy to even think of toting around and going for a ride in it. There's the other angle of it. Again, the water is quite low there. These rocks in the foreground will be all underwater and be nothing but trees on the bigger island. And there's a ship. This could have been from that ship that the fellow perished in. I'm not too sure. There was no signs on it, just a derelict old ship washed up on the beach. It might have crashed on the beach and just remained there. And there's another shot. I gleaned this from the internet. This photo from the internet, and it looks like there's quite a bit of erosion there, and there's one structure that's quite high. So the land was quite high at one time. And again, at this Kazan village, the buildings are all painted. They're not carved or anything like that, but all the totem poles are carved. Various buildings for different things going on, church or meetings or schools. There was a bench that was in one of the rooms. It was carved. Very intricate, very interesting culture. And again, that's as far as I got here. I hope everyone has enjoyed this kind of a thing here. I sure had a lot of good times in exploring this place. I'm glad we went now rather than having to wait for a few years till this COVID stuff gets over with. Anyway, thanks Moose Jaw Art Gallery for inviting me to present this.
And thanks for coming. It was a good time.